So when it comes to video, if you're asking, can I learn a skill from video? And this may sound controversial. My short answer to this is no. You can't learn a skill from a video. Now, I'm going to ask you to not turn off this video before you hear me out because there's a lot more complexity to this answer than you may think. I'll put video into two different categories. So when I think about video, whether it's social media, traditional media, internet, like whatever, however you're consuming video, I put it into two categories. One would be entertainment, and one would be for learning. Those are the two categories I typically consider learning. Now, what I would say is while video can always be a component in learning, learning isn't necessarily in all video. And this is a really important distinction to make because I see a lot of people consume large quantities of video and they say and they think they're learning. And I would say, you're not. You're consuming, you're being entertained, but you're not learning anything. And the big difference between that is I would say you've got the difference between is it passive or is it active? Are we talking about a passive activity? That to me would be the entertainment piece. So if you think about it, we're talking about not learning. The entertainment side is yes, and in that one, it is absolutely possible from video. Can you be entertained by video? Absolutely, you can be entertained by video. It actually requires nothing of you. You can simply consume it and be entertained. And in fact, this is where I think sometimes people think they're learning is that when they're being entertained, because memory is tied to emotions, there are things that you remember when you're being entertained, but memory is not necessarily learning. So just because you watched something, it entertained you, and you were able to repeat back or parrot or recall something that happened in it, does not necessarily mean you learned anything. And I think this is a really important distinction to make because this is where I see people often think, I learned something from this video. And no, you didn't. You didn't. And that's not bad. You were entertained by the video, and that's perfectly fine. Entertainment is an important activity. We need it. We shouldn't eliminate it. And not everything should be learning. We would be fatigued if everything was learning because the beautiful part of entertainment is it's passive. This is why a lot of times at the end of the day, we like to just relax and be entertained. We don't want to learn because, quite frankly, learning is an active thing. So let's transit. There you go. So that's the entertainment side, but let's transition over to the learning side because can video play a critical role in learning? It absolutely can, but there's some work associated with that. So let's talk about what that looks like because there are two components to this. So I do want to break this down because even learning is not as simple as, well, did you learn something from the video? Oh, so you're saying I was entertained or I learned something. Well, even within learning, there's two components because the original question was, can I learn a skill from a video? Let's break down the learning part. And the first part is knowledge. Can you become knowledgeable from a video? Yes, you absolutely can. And this is different than being entertained. This is where we start moving into the active phase of what we're doing. So instead of just consuming it, remembering a few things, moving on, we're actually becoming knowledgeable, but this requires activity on our part. So a big part of that is actually taking what we consume, thinking about it, reflecting on what is it that we just consumed, actually putting some thought into what is, and that may feel a little weird, like we really have to think about what we just watched. Yes, if you want it to be learning, you better think about it. You better think about what it is you just consumed and process it and actually tap into what are those emotions that I'm feeling? Because while those emotions work in entertainment and they help you maybe remember things, that plays an important part in the knowledge because part of knowledge is memory. So you do need to tap into that, but then you need to go a step further and actually start thinking about simple things, even like considering alternative points of view. How might other people be thinking about this? Mentally manipulating what is this information that you just consumed? How would I consider it in this situation? How might I apply it if I were in this or in that? Or what am I doing today that as a result of what I've just learned that I might do differently? I may not necessarily be actually doing anything yet, but I'm considering those things. I'm thinking about them. I'm deciding how this might impact things. That now is where you can become knowledgeable directly from video. Now, there is an active component that you have to take, but you can become more knowledgeable from video on this. Now we're going to get to the last part, which is the skill piece. And this is where it can get a little bit controversial, but I don't believe that you can become more skilled from video alone. Can video play a really important part in building a skill? Absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily make you skilled. Now, the thing I will say is, I don't see there being something better or worse about knowledge or skill. And that's a really important part because sometimes we can end up trying to compete. Well, which one's better? Well, it just depends on the situation. There are certain things that you don't need to be skilled at. You may need to be knowledgeable about it. You need to have an active conversation. You need to be able to think about it, apply it, do different things mentally, but you don't really need to do anything. Other things, you need to actually be skilled and be able to do it. Are you going to be a skilled communicator by watching video? No, because you actually need to do more than just consume it, process it, think about how you might possibly communicate differently, and actually start practicing this. And this is a huge component of where would you go to skill. And so, what role might video play in that? Well, it might be the thought starters. You might need to build that knowledge set. You might need to build those mental models that are all inspired or based off the content that you pulled from that video. But what's outside of that video is actually putting it into practice, defining what good looks like, which again, video can play a critical role in that. Video may help you understand and be able to define this is what a good target looks like for me to shoot at. But to actually build the skills to be able to execute that, you actually have to get out there and do it and then evaluate and take the same process that you did in becoming more knowledgeable to being more skilled. You have to do it. You have to reflect on it. You have to process about what would I have done differently? What went good? What went wrong? How would I change this? And then actually go back and do it. So all of that to say, can you learn a skill from watching video? No. Does video play an integral role in that? Yes. So, going back to the very beginning of this, learning from video, maybe, but it's all into what you do with it that's going to make the difference.